But it's been a stressful year for me. The autistic people will know this, but earlier on this year, I stood down as king of the Autistics, right? So that's what the show's all about that, right? I hadn't been king for very long, only 2 years I was king. It came about, but I realised a few years ago, I've been doing comedy and stuff all about being autistic, and sometimes I get sort of like criticised. People would say, well, you don't speak for all autistic people. Because the problem we have is we have no formal power structure, do we, autistic people? There's no one in charge. It's one of many ways in which we're different to the Catholic Church. And no one can speak for... So what I realised that was a problem 2 years ago. I declared myself king of the Autistics. So that if anyone ever said to me, well, you don't speak for all autistic people, I could go, well, actually, I am their leader. So I do speak for all of us. But it was getting too stressful. It was getting overwhelming and stressful being... You think it's easy being king, don't you? But everyone wants you to be different things. It's just sort of stressful. So I stood down. It was making me anxious, very anxious. I've been taking medication for my anxiety, which I'm not ashamed of. I've been taking a herbal medicine for my anxiety. It comes from plants. It is called alcohol. And... it's good. Would recommend alcohol if you're... I did drink alcohol when I was a teenager in my 20s. Genuinely true. I didn't like it. The reason I didn't drink alcohol is quite sad. I found that when I drank alcohol, I got drunk. And when I was drunk, I found it harder to mask my autistic traits. I found it harder to make eye contact with people, harder to say the right thing socially, harder to keep my hands still, so I didn't drink alcohol because I was ashamed of who I was. But now, I'm a little bit older, I'm proud of who I am, getting hammered every opportunity. I'm doing it for our people. I don't know if other autistics find it. I find it's like I'm more autistic when I'm drunk, you know? People say vaccines cause autism. That's not true. Jägermeister causes autism. That's where it comes from. Everyone's more autistic when they're drunk, and I think you're better off for it, you know? No small talk when you're drunk. Whoever you are, no small talk when you're drunk. Straight with the big topics. I like that. Politics, philosophy, religion, culture. That's what I want to talk about. Don't want small talk. I did a gig recently, it finished early. I went to see a friend of mine who was out drinking. I've got a friend called Sean. He's not autistic, but lovely. And he's very kind. And I arrive about 10 o'clock, but he's already really drunk. And he staggers towards me, and he hugs me, and then he goes, Joe, mate! We've got to do something about this stuff in Ukraine! That's his opener. Straight in with the Ukraine conversation. Not how are you, how's your week been, how was the gig? We've got to do something about this stuff in Ukraine. Who is the we in this sentence, Sean? It sounds like you mean me and you. And right now you've got sick on your shirt, so... I don't know if you're in a fit state to be negotiating with the Kremlin right now. I think we should get some chips and then see how we feel. That's what I think. But I like that he did that. He went straight in with politics. I think that's good. You know, I don't want to do small talk, straight with the big stuff. My father-in-law's like that all the time, and I admire him for it. He's really into philosophy. We go around with big, deep conversations about philosophy. I like it. No small talk. We saw him recently open the door. He says, hello, Joe. And then the next thing he says is, did you know that there is no such thing as truth? Yes! We're off! No, how are you? How's your week been? Did you know there is no such thing as truth? I mean, slightly undermined, I then said to him, really, is that true? He said yes. And that is... I always want to make it clear what I'm saying, right? I'm not saying that drunk people are the same as autistic people, right? What I'm saying is this, right? I'm saying that there is autistic culture that exists as a thing, and then there is neurotypical culture. And I think alcohol can blur the lines between those two cultures, right? So we're like similar but different. So like non-autistic people, you've probably had this, right? Really, really drunk, 2 a.m, you might phone up an ex. It's embarrassing. Me, drunk, 2 a.m, I'll phone up supermarkets that have changed the layout in a way I don't like. That's who I want to reconnect with. Right, I don't want to go on for too long, but the Tesco near where I live, it's one of those first floor Tesco, so you park on the ground floor, you go up and do shopping on the first floor. Got no issue with that, I think that's a good system. The entrance to the supermarket on the first floor is on the left-hand side. You go and do shopping, the tills are on the right-hand side. There's escalators that run perpendicular, so at a right angle to the rest of the supermarket. So you would expect the up escalator to be on the outer side, so it links neatly with the entrance to the supermarket, and the down escalator to be on the inner side, so it's like a perfect loop going round. For some reason, they've put the up escalator on the inner side and the down escalator on the outer side. So it's not a loop going round. Now it's like a figure of 8, and you have like an awkward interaction with someone that's done their shopping. I don't want to talk to people who've done their shopping. I want to get in and do my shopping. I just want to... It doesn't bother me, but I do think about it every day. So I feel like some of you haven't understood what I'm saying, right? What I'm saying is this. It's... This is the layout of the store. You go in on the left-hand side. Here's the tills on the right-hand side. So that's like a fixed system. You can't change that. These escalators along the bottom, they run either way. So you'd expect, right, have a moment to think about what you'd expect. You'd expect this, wouldn't you? You'd expect up along the bottom. That's like a perfect loop going round. But what I'm saying is they haven't done this, even though they could. They've done this instead. It's absolute fucking chaos at Tesco at the moment. This is very stressful. I haven't been coping. There's lots going on. It's not just the Tesco thing. There's lots going on for me. I'm not coping with the pressures of fame, if I'm honest. And I'm not famous enough to not cope with it. But I'm probably the least famous person to ever not cope with the pressures of fame. You know, I'm not. You know, I get a bit of a crowd in my hometown, but this is how famous I am, right? About once a month, I'll get recognised on the street, right? They always say the same thing. They always go, "Oh my God! My therapist shows me your videos." I'm building an audience. That's what you want as a comedian. Some advice to comedians, right? Don't try and be a comedian that everyone likes. Be a comedian. Think about what demographic you appeal to, and then you could build an audience. The audience that I am appealing to is exclusively mentally ill people. That's who likes my comedy. And thank you all for coming. But it's been going well, you know. I've got sort of like, you know, a few videos do well on the internet, you know, and it hasn't changed things too much, you know. I'm not any better off financially, you know, because I'll asked to do lots of charity gigs now, and that's an added stress, you know, because you'd think that just charity is good, don't you? You think that's like a good thing, but there's some autistic charities that are sort of a bit, I'm not sure about. I was asked to do one charity gig. This is how it was pitched to me. Someone comes up to me after a club gig and they go, "Would you do a benefit for our charity?" It's a charity that delivers therapy to autistic people. Okay, fine. What kind of therapy is this? This is how the therapy was described to me. I don't know whether this is a fair assessment, but this is how it was described to me. She says, "Our therapy is based on the idea that the human brains are like filing cabinets, right? And autistic brains have files missing in their filing cabinets. And because they have files missing in their filing cabinet brains, it means that autistic people are trapped in the autistic world and they can't join the real world with everyone else. And what our therapy does is it allows autistic people to manually insert those files into their filing cabinet brains so that they can escape the autistic world and join the real world." And I was so offended that this person thought that I would know what a filing cabinet was. So I'm 35 years old, got no idea what that is. Some sort of old people thing. I don't know what a filing cabinet is. Then I realised it's not her fault. It's not her fault she's talking about filing cabinets, is it? Because she lives in the real world, right? I live in the autistic world where we've invented computers. So, not the same. But it's been, yeah, I'm not famous. I'm not on TV. The famous comedians are on TV. I've been trying, you know. When I was king, I thought I'd try and get on TV and I can speak for autistic people on TV. That hasn't gone well. I had some like meetings. If there's any TV people in, this is the email that I want to receive, right? I want to receive an email that says, "Hi, we like Joe's comedy. We would like Joe to come in for a meeting with us. And in that meeting, we would like for him to have prepared exactly 4 ideas for television and radio shows. We will discuss those ideas and potentially take one of them forward." That's the email I want to receive, right? I know what I was going in for, right? But they don't send that email. They send an email that says, "Hey, we love Joe's comedy. We'd love it if Joe could come in for a chat." And I think I've made a friend, so... I go in all excited with my Pokemon cards, ready for a chat, and they go, "So, have you got any ideas for Radio 4? And I go, "No. I've got this Charizard, is that what you wanted?" I'm not. The truth is, I don't think I have what television people want. All the meetings I've been to, they always ask for the same things. They go, we want you to tell the kind of jokes that only an autistic person can get away with telling. Tell the jokes only autistic people can tell, right? And then you're thrown into this like weird sort of culture war thing where like, that's the big debate in sort of the comedy, isn't it? There's some people think there's certain jokes that only certain comedians should be allowed to tell, and then there's other people who think that any comedian should be allowed to tell any joke, right? Probably I sort of think I'm more on the sort of first one. I think there are certain jokes where only certain comedians can get away with doing them. I know that's true because I once tried to do all of Ramesh Ranganathan's material. I went out on stage all confident, talked all about my Sri Lankan heritage, the racism that I'd experienced as a result of that, and it didn't work. There's a subtext there where they say the joke's only an autistic person can tell, right? They mean we want sort of edgy sort of comedy, we want you to be a little bit sort of edgy. That's not sort of really where my brain goes to. I like edgy comedy, but it's just not the kind of thing that I do, I've written one edgy joke. There's one edgy joke in the show, so that if there's TV people in, they can be impressed by how edgy I can be. It comes in about 5 minutes' time. I really hate doing it, and you'll sort of know it's coming because I look more uncomfortable and awkward than I normally do. And it's sort of, once it's over, I prefer doing the show once it's over, and then it's better because I know the edgy joke's been done. So the punchline is, it goes, so I go, da-da-da-da-da. But I do like getting foot rubs from prostitutes, right? That's the point. I know, sort of unpleasant as a punchline, isn't it? But just trying to do it so that I can be sort of more sort of edgy and be on TV. I think that's what they want, I think TV's a sort of dying medium, so they want sort of stuff that's going to sort of grab attention and be a bit sort of shocking. I don't know whether this is funny or upsetting, but I'll just tell you and you can respond how you want, right? Genuinely true. I was asked to audition for a TV show in America. It was going to be a disability-themed travel show, and the premise of the show was there'd be 7 different disabled presenters, and they would plan a holiday for a disabled member of the public, right? And so I'd be one of the presenters, and I'd plan a holiday for an autistic person to make it work. That's a good idea. I'd be up for that show. Sounds fun. Genuine title of the show, Crip Advisor. That's what they wanted to go for. Genuinely true. I know. And all-inclusive was right there, wasn't it? But they left that. I just don't think I sort of meshed with how TV people work. I have been trying, as King, I've been trying to, be on TV so I can speak for us. So I went to a party. That's how hard I've been trying. There was like a TV party, which only really happens in the arts. They have these sort of parties where you can sort of. No other industry does that, right? If you're a plumber, you don't have to go to a party put on by people who have broken toilets. That's not how. But in sort of comedy, you've got to sort of go and network and stuff. And I was invited to this party. My agent said I should go. I didn't really know anyone. It was awkward. It was really loud and hectic. And there's one person I knew. She introduced me to 2 other people. We're having like a good time. It's nice. We're sort of talking. They're all talking about television. They're really into television, but they're not into the kind of television that I watch, Like, they're into, like, those things on, like, Netflix and Hulu and stuff like that, like, those TV shows where people go, oh, you got to watch that. It's really, really great. It only gets good in season 7, but it's really, really good. Then it's not good, is it? It's not good. If it only gets good in season, it's not. That's like me saying that I'm an incredible lover, but only just as I ejaculate. That's when I get good. So they're talking all about this stuff on like Hulu, these like American dramas that go on for it, and I'm seeing any of them, it's awkward. I'm always hyper aware of how much I'm talking as a percentage of compared to how many people there are at the table, right? So if there's 4 people, on average I should be talking 25% of the time. I'm always sort of really aware of that. And I'm not, I'm not talking enough, and I feel awkward, but I don't want to like be steering the conversation away. They obviously pick up on this too, and they turn to me and they go, so Joe, what TV shows have you been watching recently? And I had to admit to these really trendy London TV producers that year I had been exclusively rewatching the entirety of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I don't know whether they were trying to make conversation, trying to look cool, or whether they genuinely didn't know. They said, oh, we don't know what that is, right? So I had to explain the plot of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to these trendy London TV producers. I just sort of explained to them it's just this TV show about this guy who's born and raised in West Philadelphia, and he spends most of his days on a playground, sort of chilling out and maxing, relaxing. And and he also he shoots some b-ball outside the school. And then what happens is in season 1, there's a couple of guys, and they're up to no good, and they sort of start making trouble in the neighborhood. And I think it's in episode 1. In episode 1, he gets in this one little fight, and because he gets in this fight, his mum gets scared. She's angry, she's scared and angry. She's really, really angry. She's so angry that she looks completely different to how she does in the rest of the series. It's really angry about this fight. And then his mum says to him, she's like, you're moving in with your auntie and uncle in Bel Air. And they went, oh, that sounds good. And I went, yeah, it's good. It's on iPlayer. You should watch it, yeah. And they said, so what happens? Does he go to Bel Air? And I went, yeah, he does. He goes to Bel Air, yeah. And they said, how does he get there? And I said, well, what happens is he whistles for a cab, and when it comes near... By the way, if you're thinking this is going on too long, the Scotsman newspaper agree with you, so you're not alone. He whistles for a cab, and then when the cab comes near, the license plate on the cab, it says fresh on the license plate, and then under the mirror, really on the mirror, there's dice in the mirror, and you remember Will from earlier? He wonders whether the cab is rare. My view would be license plate, yes, dice, no. Because dice, I've seen dice in the mirror before, but license plate, it's probably the only one, isn't it? Otherwise, it's not a legal license plate to be used. I think I've overthought it, because he thinks you're home, forget it, we're going to Bel Air. And then he pulls up to the house about 7 or 8. He whistles at the cabbie, your home, smell you later. And yeah, I don't want to spoil it all for you, but yeah, that's it really. He's finally there. And he sits on his throne as the Prince of Bel Air. And and they said, is it like Fleabag? And I said, no, it's not. Not everything is like Fleabag, but so TV is. I say that I'm not edgy. I was actually edgy last year when I started doing this show. I'm only ever edgy on accident. I never think I'm going to be edgy or controversial, but I was accidentally edgy. The poster art for this show came through. Tim Stringer does the art for me. It's me, King of the Autistics. I said to him, could you draw me as an autistic Jesus with... last Supper, different autistic disciples, sort of notable or famous autistic people. Got Chris Packham, Greta Thunberg, Temple Grandin, Christine McGuinness, Anthony Hopkins, and Elon Musk as Judas on the end. And we've got chicken nuggets, potato waffles, and beans in a separate bowl. I was pleased with that. Yeah, I was pleased when it came through. I thought it was, I was really pleased with it. I thought it was really funny, it made me laugh, I thought that's great, Straight away I put it on social media when they're doing a new show, this is the poster art for my new show, I was very pleased with it. I forget that Christians feel very strongly about Jesus, and a very angry message. It was a very difficult day on social media, and it was upsetting. I didn't want to upset the Christians. I'm not one of those comedians who like slag off Christians. I think it's lazy, to sort of say that. Obviously, there's bad Christians who do bad things, but also I know lots of nice Christians who do nice things. And if you're going to attribute the bad things to the bad Christians, you also have to attribute the good things to the good Christians. And I think if you think about it. In modern history, some of the most evil men of modern history have been atheists, haven't they? People like Joseph Stalin and Ricky Gervais, they're atheists. It doesn't necessarily follow that if you're a Christian, you're a good or a bad person. I think it's a neutral thing. And it was upsetting, to have all the Christians really sort of angry with me. And their issue was that they said that me having that poster art was me saying that I am Christ. Right? And that's like blasphemous saying. I don't think that's what I'm saying with that. I think think I'm saying that I'm Christ-like, is what I'm saying. I am a lot like Jesus. I am like Jesus, I am. Not just because I hate bankers, but also because I do like... Because I do like getting foot rubs. It's not my style. I don't like it. It was stressful. It was stressful having another Christian angle. It made me really anxious. It made me anxious about next year's show, which I was going to call ADHD Muhammad. I'm not sure whether that's a good idea anymore. Very stressful, you know. And I didn't like everyone being angry with me, and it was stressful. I didn't want to upset people. I wouldn't go out of my way to upset people. And I know what it's like to be let down by a religious figure. I know that, you know, because I was a massive Kanye West fan, so I know. I don't know if any other autistics have ever had like a special interest become very problematic very quickly, right? Music's always been like a special interest of mine, right? When I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Marilyn Manson, which was a special interest. That hasn't gone well. And then in my 20s, I got really into the Smiths and Morrissey. And then genuinely in my late 20s, it was Kanye West, and I thought, surely he won't do anything to let me down. But I think when Kanye became like a special interest, right, before he was saying the things he's saying now, there was a small period where he was talking about neurodivergence in a really interesting way, and I think I really connected with that. There's a song where he says, an awesome thing engulfed in shame. Sort of brilliant way to sort of put having a different brain, awesome thing engulfed in shame. I saw an interview with him a few years ago when things were sort of going well for me and I was starting to get these meetings with TV people, and he said this. He said, people want to hear crazy ideas. They want to see crazy shows. They want to listen to crazy music. But they don't want to deal with crazy people. If you see a crazy show, if you listen to crazy music, chances are it's been made by a crazy person. I like that. I thought he was talking about something which really resonated with me. He was talking about a hypocrisy of people wanting to hear outside and neurodivergent ideas, but they don't want to sort of create an inclusive world where those people can thrive, you know? And that gave me like a confidence to just create my own stuff, be a DIY about it, you know, put my own stuff out on the internet. That obviously comes with its own problems, you know. I try and do right by autistic people, you know. That's what I try and do. You know, to do. If autistic people come to my shows and like it, I think, well, then I'm sort of, that's my team, you know. And but sometimes they get angry with me, and that's more upsetting. I had a message from someone saying, a lot of my jokes, they're like script flips, aren't they? I'm saying the things people say about autistic people, but I'm saying about different groups. And someone messaged saying, you're always having to go at neurotypical people, always having to go, and it's, I don't like it. I'm autistic, but I don't like it. It's like you're trying to start a war between the autistics and the non-autistics. And just to be clear, I'm not trying to do that. Mainly because that is not a war that we would win. We're not good at war. We're good at lots of things. We're not good at war. There were no quiet spaces on the Somme, were there? But it's a weird thing, because on social media, everyone wants you to be like what they want you to be. You know, I get a lot of the time people message, if I do swearing in my comedy, I get messages saying you shouldn't swear in your comedy because I want to be able to show this comedy to my children. It's ruining it that you're swearing, so you should swear less. So I'm trying to do that as well. I'm trying to not have any swearing in this show. I'm also trying to be really edgy and controversial. That's a fine line to walk. Edgy, controversial comedy that's also suitable for children, but... Because I think all I ever wanted, I wanted to be a comedian. I loved comedy. I wanted to do comedy. And then if you talk about being autistic, like people want you to be a role model. Want you to be a role model to young autistic people. And I try and do that. I always feel like I'm letting people down. We did me and Abigail did a live podcast at the Latitude Festival, and I thought it had gone really, really well. We had a really good time, and then someone sent loads of messages on us online saying that I was being a bad role model to young autistic people. And messaging both of us, messaging the guests we had on the podcast, also messaging the festival. That's like our employers, you know. They're messaging us telling you shouldn't book these people again. They're bad role models to young autistic people. And their complaint was this. They said that I was encouraging young people to drink alcohol and take drugs. That was their accusation, right? Which obviously I didn't do, you know. And but that's what's wild about the internet. People could just make stuff up, and they can sort of... You know, then they send messages, and that's just on the internet. Or someone on Twitter saying that I encourage young people to drink alcohol and take drugs, and that's just out there, you know. And it's particularly weird to do it with a live podcast recording, because we've got the recording of it, you know. We went back through this recording and was like, what has this person heard that they've interpreted as me encouraging young people to drink alcohol and take drugs. And the only thing I can think is this, right? I'll play you a little clip. I assume this is what they heard, and they've somehow in their head, they've like interpreted this as me encouraging young people to drink and take drugs. You'll hear two voices. You'll hear the poet Luke Wright, and then you'll hear my voice. This is what I assume the only thing I can think it would have been.
So I do find it, a bit overloading, really, and that's why I drink and take drugs, and it's better for that. Yeah.
That's our message to the young people.
That's our message to young people.
Drink and take drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks bad out of context, doesn't it? In my defense, I don't remember saying that. I was off my face on Ket at the time. I was having a very good festival. I think I was just making a joke. It was a funny thing to say that because it was inappropriate, so that's why I thought it'd be funny to say. But it's just truth is I don't take drugs. Like I sort of wish I did though, because I know that that's such a stereotype, isn't it? The reason I haven't taken drugs, right, is because I'm scared of getting in trouble. That's what it is, right? I'm really, really scared of getting in trouble and someone telling me off and then I've broken the rules and I'm scared of getting in trouble. And that's such a stereotype, isn't it? And in many ways, I am the stereotype. I was always aware of this when I was king, that I'm sort of perpetuating stereotypes. I'm what people expect autistic people to look like. There's a common complaint from particularly adult autistics, particularly who maybe have like a long-term relationship or live on their own or have a job, that people will question whether they're really autistic. They go, I don't believe you're really autistic. And that's upsetting, isn't it? I understand why people are upset by that. It's offensive to say that to question someone's identity just because they don't meet a very narrow and offensive and harmful stereotype. But do you know what's more upsetting than that? The fact that no one has ever questioned my diagnosis. Because I do fit an offensive and narrow stereotype. Oh yeah, weird little nerd. Yeah, that makes sense, yeah. I was always aware of that, when I was king, that I could only speak for myself, but I wanted to speak for everyone. That's why I wanted to be king, to speak up for us, because we don't get to speak for ourselves very much. When you see stuff on TV, it's not us, is it? It's the parents of autistic children, they go on the news and talk about autism, and that's cool, some good parents of autistic children speaking up for their kids, but there's a difference between speaking up for and speaking for. Those are two different things. And if I'm honest with you, some of the most upsetting things people have said to me after gigs has come from what I know is a tiny minority of parents of autistic children who believe some weird things about their children and autism and often vaccines as well. And I was at a barbecue a couple of years ago, for example. I'm having a good time at this barbecue. My friends have got kids, all our friends have got kids. I'm having a good time at this barbecue. Getting later in the day, it's one family's turn to leave, and the little boy in the family says goodbye. And this is how he says goodbye. He goes, "Goodbye, kids and grown-ups." Lovely, lovely way to say goodbye. Well done, little boy. Then his mum goes, "No, say it properly." The little boy goes, "Goodbye, kids and grown-ups." And then his mum says, "I'm sorry about him. He has autism, but it's not severe autism." Right? So let's unpack what's being said there. She's apologizing for him saying goodbye in a way that's not bad. It's unusual, but it's not bad. Then she's saying he has autism, but it's not severe autism, right? I hate the word severe. Not because I think all autistic people are the same, but because I don't think any of us are inherently bad, and the word severe means worse. It really upset me, to see someone be apologized for being different. And what people don't realize is when I am somewhere and there's an autistic child, they will often do things where I go, "Oh, I used to do that. I remember that. I remember I used to line up my toys. I had mini boglins as a child. I'd line them all up in a row, and I enjoyed it." I sometimes think about what I was going to say and think about how it feels saying things in an unusual way and then say it out loud. And it's upsetting to see someone be apologized for being different, and especially upsetting for someone to be apologized for being different in the same way that I am different. I didn't say anything, didn't want to have an argument at this barbecue, but it did upset me. And I don't know if any of you have been somewhere where, you feel you should have spoken out, but afterwards you sort of justify it, don't you? Go, "Well, I didn't say it because of this." But I guess the justification I gave myself was, she spoke fluent English, but English wasn't her first language. So I was worried that if I'd said you shouldn't say those words, other people would think I was being sort of like xenophobic, sort of correcting her language when it wasn't her first language. But like, she spoke fluent English. She lived in England. She was married to an English guy, but she was French. But not severely French. she had quite a mild form of the condition. I mean, between us, she said she was French. I couldn't see anything wrong with her. She just looked normal to me, but she said she was French, and you just got to go along with it, haven't you? But these days, you just got to go along with it. You have. You can't say you're not French, right? Even though there does seem to be a lot of it around these days, isn't there? There does. I'm just saying. When I was growing up in the 90s, right, we didn't really have all that French stuff. It wasn't really a thing. We just got on with it. I'm not saying no one was French. I'm just, you know what I mean, right? Like the ones that were French, you knew they were French. You know what? This sort of. Do you remember the really French ones? The ones that had to be kept in patisseries. Those ones. And then in the late 90s, they were let out of the patisseries and into the community, rightly or wrongly. I thought they were very happy in the patisseries, but. And now it's like a trendy thing, isn't it? Everyone's got to have a fucking label, haven't they? So they say they're French to be, but they're not. I don't know. I'm not going to ask her, but I just, like you know what I mean. They self-identify as French, but they haven't been properly diagnosed by an Englishman, and that's all. That's all that I will count. I'm glad that you're clapping, because I put that material on the internet and some parents of autistic children got very angry with me. That was an upsetting thing as well, There was parents saying that they're upset with me, and I hope people wouldn't think that was me having a go at parents of autistic children. I think parents of autistic children have their own representation problem, right? I think that you do have some representation, but the representation that you have is not representative of the vast majority of parents of autistic kids. In my experience, the vast majority of parents of autistic kids are trying to speak up for their kids in a world that's stacked against them, but the loudest voices are the ones who sort of see autism as a burden, And I think you have a similar but different representation. It was upsetting, for people to say that I hate the parents of autistic children. I love the parents of autistic. I have a good understanding of parents of autistic children, because both my mother and my father, they were both the parents of an autistic child. So in many ways, I probably understand better than the actual parent of an autistic child, because I grew up with two of them in the house. So I have a good understanding of the full spectrum of what they're like, and it's not always easy. It's not always easy having the parent of an autistic child. It's not. And it's a spectrum, isn't it, being the parent of an autistic child, right? And the people who are angry with me on the internet, they're on social media, right? They're sort of using computers, stuff like that, right? My parents are not on social media. My parents can barely work the DVD player at times. I love them very much, my parents, but I'm not going to pretend they're not a burden sometimes, if I'm honest. It's difficult, but no, I do. It's an upsetting accusation to say that I hate the parents, because I don't. Saying that I hate my mum. I love my mum. She is great, But here's a story about my mum, which I think sort of encapsulates the kind of person she is, right? When I was a teenager, she was running a support group for parents of autistic children, right? And I didn't at that time know that I was autistic, but that is another story for a different show. But in that group, they were invited to an event where they were going to have a stand at the event. And all the other parents in the group, they said we should put things on the stand about how autism is bad, it's difficult, and how it's hard having a child with autism. And my mum said, no, we shouldn't do that. On the stand, we should put all the things that we love and that we're proud of about our autistic children. And her arguing that changed the viewpoint of the other parents in the group. My mum's great, and she's probably where a lot of the sort of neurodivergence comes from, is from my mum. But it's hard to tell, because there's a fine line between an autism diagnosis and being a British mum in your 60s. Those are very similar things. People talk about cognitive empathy, right? So not like empathy in terms of emotion, but cognitive empathy in terms of like understanding that people might not know the things that you do. My mum struggles with that a lot. My mum is always, whenever I see her, giving me hot gossip about all of her friends who I've never met in my life. Go around her house and she'll be like, Sally Thomas's brother's getting married. I don't know who that is, Mum. I don't know. That's one of your friends, isn't it, Sally Thomas? You've got your friends and I've got my friends. So you can tell me about Sally Thomas's brother, but you've got to give me context before you tell me about, because I don't know who those people... remember, we talked about this, Mum. Remember the game we played with the two dolls? Where one of the dolls left the room and met Sally Thomas and lots of other middle-aged women. Got loads of gossip, came back into the room, but the first doll didn't know. So you have to give me context before you tell me all about... Genuine quote from my mother. She goes, "You do know Sally Thomas. You met her when you were 15. I have to explain to my mum that I am autistic, but I'm not Rain Man. I don't remember every single middle-aged woman I've ever met in my life." But she is great, my mummy, and she's very supportive of me. She's always been supportive of me in comedy, and we're not from a family where it's easy to go into the arts, you know? We're from a sort of fairly ordinary family. There's other comedians who've got family, you know, where their parents were famous TV producers or war criminals or whatever, right? But my family... It's weird, that joke. It sounds like it's about a specific person, but I've counted, could be at least 3 comedians, so... But we're a fairly sort of ordinary family. My dad was a probation officer, my mum worked in schools and things, and but she's still very, very sort of encouraging me in comedy and very protective of me in comedy. She's very, very protective. We saw her recently. Almost as soon as we walk in, she's angry. She's very angry because, in her opinion, there is a comedian on TV who has stolen my act. That's her accusation, right? My first thought is, has she seen Ramesh Ranganathan? Is that what's happened? It's more the other way around. It was a mix-up. It wasn't right. It was Fern Brady, right? She's seen Fern Brady on TV. My mum thinks that Fern Brady has stolen my act, right? If you haven't seen Fern, she's really, really brilliant. She's got a book as well that's great, right? She does all this stuff about growing up in Bathgate, halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow. She talks about living in London, being a Scottish woman in London, and all the sort of stereotypes that Southern English people have all about Scottish people. She does this brilliant material all about how she used to work as a stripper. It's really, really funny, really, really honest. It's brilliant, right? My mum obviously saw that and went, "That is exactly what my son does. Who is this?" What it is, I assume, is that Fern is also autistic. So she saw Fern talking about being autistic and she thought that was like plagiarized from what I do, right? Again, I had to explain that I am actually autistic. This isn't a character act that I'm doing that Fern's stolen from me. It's a real... But I said, my mum felt like, because that's how the media thinks, you know? We have representation now. It's 2024. We have representation. But it's a specific kind of representation where you're only allowed one of each thing, right? One refugee, one trans person, one autistic person, one of each thing. And that's not proper representation at all. Representation is that you have all of those groups represented, and then within those groups, you see that those groups are diverse within themselves. You know, you can't just have a sort of tokenistic one of each thing. The BBC a few years ago did like a spate of commissioning autism-themed things, right? They commissioned 3 things. They commissioned Fern's stand-up special, which is really, really brilliant. They commissioned a sitcom written by a non-autistic writer. And they commissioned a documentary in which Paddy McGuinness said that at one point he wasn't sure whether his children would ever be able to feel love. And it wasn't made clear whether that's because they are autistic or because they are the children of Paddy McGuinness. More environmental than anything else. So I understand why my mum felt like that, you know? It can feel like that sometimes, you know? And that's not proper representation, you know? It can feel like if Fern gets to be the autistic comedian, then I just have to wait in the wings for Fern to either die or retire or write something problematic on Twitter. Those are my only options. But that's not proper representation. You want proper... And I think autistic people do want representation. I think, even though I'm not king anymore, I think I can say that for us, you know, that we want to see ourselves in the world. I know that's true because every autistic person I know, they do this thing where they will claim that random historical and fictional characters are actually undiagnosed autistic people and they can properly back up their claims. We're now entering... autistic people in the room, this is just for you because I've found the non-autistic people shout out some very worrying things. You can't be trusted. I gave you a chance at Liverpool and you can't be trusted. Who do you think that historical or fictional, apart from Einstein and there's another one that everyone, but apart from Einstein, who do you think that was autistic? Montgomery. I don't even know that that's just one name, like Madonna. I don't know. Who's Montgomery and what's the reasoning behind her? World War II general. Oh, I love it. This is what's great about these. They're always really fucking niche. Another week, it was like a nun, a specific nun from the 16th century who was definitely autistic. Montgomery, what did Montgomery do that was the...
Essentially, most famous British general turned time in North Africa campaign of World War II.
Right. This sounds like it could have done some problematic things. Elon Musk has damaged our reputation enough. Sorry, carry on. Oh, okay, that was broadly a good thing, wasn't it? Yeah, okay. You've turned that around on me. Good. Defeated fascism, wow. And Churchill's been taking credit for it ever since. That's amazing. Any more?
Frederick the Great.
Frederick the Great, wow. What's the reason behind Frederick the Great?
He loved tall soldiers. He would have them shipped and kidnapped from across Europe.
Okay, good. So if you didn't hear, he said that he loved tall soldiers and would have them shipped in and kidnapped. These aren't typical autistic traits, but it's not all just loving trains, you know. Many of us kidnap tall men and torture them. How did he do it in an autistic way?
He'd have them march up and down his palace, like just watch them.
Okay. Oh, I like that, yay. We're so much less cruel now we've got TV shows we can rewatch, aren't we? That's good. Any more? Say again? Alan Turing. Oh yeah, Alan Turing is 100% where I fully agree with Alan Turing. Any more? Matilda, we've gone fictional. Yes, I like this. What's the thinking of Matilda?
Oh, just when I was a kid, I think I just assumed that was when people say autism was a superpower. I assumed that I was going to get.
Oh, you were going to... If you didn't hear that, they were worried that they were told autism's superpower. They saw that film and went, well, sooner or later the telekinesis is going to kick in. This is great. Fantastic. Those are all great. My favourite one I've ever had was Perseus. Someone in the audience thought that they were good. I don't know why I put that slide at the end. Someone thought Perseus was autistic. Perseus is a Greek demigod, Perseus. He was the son of Zeus. He wasn't even fully human, but someone in the audience thought he was autistic. And I said, why do you think Perseus was autistic? He goes, think about it. That's how we killed Medusa. Didn't I making eye contact? Think about it. All lands up. My one is Moses. I think Moses was autistic. That's why he parted the Red Sea. Didn't like it touching on his plate. That's Moses, the first human being in history to ask for the social rules to be written down for them. That's one of the chosen people. I like that. We're sort of creating our own representation. I like that. The only one I've ever pushed back on was Shakespeare. Someone thought Shakespeare was autistic. I don't believe that. I don't think an autistic person would ever wear a collar that uncomfortable. It just wouldn't happen. Our culture, but we want represent, and I think in a weird way we do have representation in comedy, certainly, but it's never said. It's always a coded representation. In loads of sitcoms, there's characters that look autistic and sound autistic, but they never say they're autistic. If you watch The It Crowd, there's Moz, isn't there? If you watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine in America, there's the Captain Holt. He's like an autistic character. The creepy stepson in Fleabag, he's autistic. Every time there's like a creepy, weirdo, pervert character in a British sitcom, they always look and act exactly like me, and I don't like it. But I do audition for all of them. Take the money where you can. But the obvious one is Sheldon, is it, from The Big Bang Theory, right? He's like a sort of coded autistic character, right? If you haven't seen The Big Bang Theory, it's an American sitcom. It's all about these four nerdy, socially awkward men, and they do all the things that nerdy and socially awkward men do, right? They read comic books, they play video games, they do science experiments, and they have relationships with very attractive women. All the things that nerdy and socially awkward men are famous for doing. And as a character in The Big Bang Theory called Sheldon, right? I just described the character if you haven't seen him before, right? So he has a set routine. He gets very upset if his routine is disrupted. He has a difficulty picking up on social cues, particularly like sarcasm. If someone's sarcastic, he sometimes takes that literally and doesn't understand what sarcasm and what isn't. He's very focused areas of specialist interest, you know, and he wants to just talk about his specialist areas of interest. So I would say Sheldon is an autistic character. He's definitely autistic, right? But I watched an interview with the producers, and they said, no, he's not autistic. We don't pathologize our characters. He's not autistic. But he is. He is. I've seen it. He's definitely autistic. Just because there's not an episode where Sheldon gets a diagnosis, he's definitely autistic. You can't do that. That's cheating. They're trying to get out of the representation conversation by just going, oh, he's not autistic. You can't do that if you played him more. That's like if I wrote a sitcom, and in that sitcom, there was a character who always wore a black and white stripy jumper and onions around his neck, right? And he wore a beret, he had a little moustache, he rode around on a bicycle selling baguettes. If one of you, quite reasonably, accused me of xenophobia, I can't just go, no. Pierre's not French, no. What are you talking about? I don't know where you got that from. I wish they'd say that Sheldon is autistic, right? Because I think that, in some ways, I think he's quite good representation. This is why. It's because he's neither inspiring nor tragic. And those are the two things autistic people are allowed to be on TV, inspiring or tragic. Those are the only two things that we've ever seen explicitly autistic people being on TV. And I'm not neither of those things, you know? I'm just someone who's got quite a good life. I've got a good life because I've built an environment that works for me, and I sort of have a good life in that. And I see that in Sheldon, the character. And I do have a good life, you know? Occasionally I get shouted at by a farmer, but otherwise I've got quite a good life. The farmer thing needs context. It only happened once, but it's really stuck with me. The context is, so my wife has ADHD, right? I think that's a good combination, you know? I think that the two neurotypes work together. Loads of people I know, Abigail's partner is autistic, lots of people, autistic and ADHD, I think those two things work together. Complementary neurotypes is how I describe them. You know, I think the things one person's good at, the other person's not good at, but then the thing person, and vice versa, you know? Like, I'm good at showing up to things on time. She's got the social skills to apologize when we're half an hour late. It works together. And I think we have a really good relationship because of that sort of complementary neurotypes. But what will occasionally happen is that the ADHD one will want to go into a sheep field, and the autistic one will know that that is against the rules. So that happened to us in North Wales a year ago, Machynlleth, where it's lambing season. She wants to go into this field and take photos of the lambs. She's asked me to make clear that she never will get so close to the lambs that it was upsetting for the lambs, but she did want to go across the fence, and that is against the rules. And I said we shouldn't go over the fence, we're not meant to. She just goes over the fence to go into the lamb field. I'm sort of at a point in my life now where I've just resigned myself to my life of crime, so she does all these impulsive things, I just go along with it because I'm scared of being alone, and she's taking photos of the lambs. I'm sort of stood back anxiously. And then the farmer comes along, and the farmer says, oh, you're not meant to be in here. And she goes, oh, sorry, we didn't know we weren't meant to be in here. And I said, well, I did say that I thought we weren't meant to be in here. And she goes, well, there's not a sign, so we can't know. You can't live your lives like this. You can't just do whatever you want unless there's a sign there. That's not how rules work. But we do have a good life. We've got a good life. You know, we do this. I do this in the evening. The daytime, I like to go to museums. That's why I want to, like my hometown of Portsmouth, we've got the best museum in the world, Natural History Museum of Portsmouth. Brilliant. Yes. They've got an exhibition about dangerous animals that I think is the most powerful and thought-provoking thing I've seen in any museum in the world, right? So it talks all about sharks, they're dangerous. Talks about crocodiles, talks about mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are very small, but they're one of the most dangerous animals in the world. And then at the bottom of the display, it says, to see the most dangerous animal in the world, press the button on your right. And you press the button on the right, and the screen turns into a mirror to show that it is humanity who is the most dangerous animal in the world. Yes! I love that. You're in a museum, but then it's making you think about mankind's place in the natural world. I was there once. There was two teenagers, obviously bunking off school. By the way, bunking off school to go to a museum. Good work, lads. I fully approve of that truancy. Yeah, we're going to learn, but on our own terms, thank you very much. I watched these teenagers watching the Dangerous Animals exhibition. They read about sharks, read about crocodiles, read about mosquitoes. To see the most dangerous animal in the world, press the button on the right. They press the button on the right, the screen turns into a mirror, and one of them goes, fuck off, I ain't done nothing! It was amazing. Best thing I've ever seen in my life. I have a good life, you know, and that's why I wish they'd say that Sheldon is autistic, right? Because he's got quite a good life too, and I feel like that's better representation than a lot of what we've seen before. And I understand why they don't want to say that he's autistic, right? Because if they say he's autistic, they're just then thrown into quite a messy conversation about representation. You know, some people would say that he should have been played by an autistic actor. I think there's a good argument for that. You know, so some people would say that he's a stereotype. I guess he kind of is, but in the same way, lots of sitcom characters are stereotypes. And so the producers of that show have just gone, no, we don't want to deal with that. And that's a shame. You're robbed of representation because people don't want to have that messy conversation. I understand why people are scared to have that conversation, because that conversation is happening on Twitter, which is not a good place for any nuanced conversation. I call it Twitter, by the way. I know it's called something else now, but I take the same approach to Twitter that Elon Musk takes to trans people. I think if you're born Twitter, you're going to be Twitter your whole life. You can fucking self-identify as X all you want. You're Twitter, mate. And everything's messy on Twitter, you know, because Twitter, there is representation. There is representation on Twitter. Everybody is represented there, proper representation. Lots of people from every group. But the problem is that even though everyone is represented, it's the worst people from all of those groups. They're all there. And it's like a UN conference of pricks. It's a horrible sort of cesspit of a website, and everyone's angry all of the time. They're always angry on Twitter. I think that the fact that everyone's angry and you're interacting with lots of different people and they're all angry, I think that can breed prejudice, because if you interact with a group on Twitter, you're probably interacting with the worst of that group, so it's not a fair sample, is it? It's like if the only vegetarians you'd ever met were Hitler and Morrissey. It's not a full example. And everyone's angry all the time, and no one sees anyone else's point of view. They're just angry all the time, and everyone's got their own lobbying group. But I don't think anyone feels represented by their lobbying group on Twitter. You know, I don't think they do. And there's one group in particular you see a lot on Twitter. You know, and they're always angry all the time. They always take things in bad faith, and I support this group. I fully support this group. But I think they've had a hard time, you know, and they deserve to fight for their rights. But just the way they're so aggressive on Twitter, you know, always taking things in bad faith and attacking people. Makes me less sympathetic to their cause, you know. And everyone's awkward because you all know who I'm talking about, don't you? It's the Cyclists, isn't it? It's the Cyclists. The Cyclists are the most aggressive lobbying group in this country. They're really angry all the time. Every sort of few months, a comedian I know will make a gentle joke about cyclists on social media, and they will lose more professional work than the ones who've done actual sex crimes. That's where the comedy industry's at. Can't talk bad about the cyclists, right? And the thing, I do support the cyclists. I support the cyclists. You know, I think they get a really hard time. People are horrible about cyclists, and you know, it's better for the environment. It's healthier. You know, I support the cyclists. And someone actually on this tour, I've been doing jokes about cyclists, and someone came up to me and they said, "What you need to understand is that we experience prejudice, because if a driver jumps a red light, people go bad driver." But if a cyclist jumps a red light, they go typical cyclist, that's what they're like, right? And he said it's like a prejudice. And I thought, yeah, it is, it's like a prejudice people have. And then he said, being a cyclist today is very similar to how I imagine it was being gay in the 80s. It's fucking nuts. That's the line, cyclist, no it's not. And it's the thing, I guess I just don't like angry conversation. I don't think they're getting anywhere, you know, we see cyclists and drivers. I don't feel represented by drivers on social media, and they're always angry all the time. Cyclists, right now, there'll be a conversation on Twitter. Cyclists shouting at drivers, drivers shouting at cyclists, cyclists shouting at drivers. They're not coming to any conclusions. They're just shouting at each other. The drivers and the cyclists shouting at each other. I wish they would come together and we can fuck up the e-scooter cunts. Those are our common enemy. Fucking hate the e-scooter cunts. I know I said I wasn't going to swear anymore, but I thought about the e-scooter cunts and I'm going to think of another way to say it. I fucking hate those I hate the cunts who said I shouldn't swear like I'm a fucking child. I hate the cunts who said I had to be edgy and controversial as well. I hate the cunts that said I had to speak for all autistic people. I hate the cunts that said I couldn't speak for any autistic people, or even if it speaks for myself as an autistic people. I hate the cunts at Tesco. I hate the cunt who emailed me and said that I shouldn't say cunt because, and I quote, there are ladies in. I hate all the fucking cunts with all their fucking opinions. This is why I couldn't be king, because they have all these fucking kind of opinions. And what those cunts don't understand is this, is that the representation is not a finite resource that we all have to scrabble over. That's not what representation is. Representation is an action that you can take. You can be the representation you want to see in the world. If you think about the representation that meant something to you growing up, whoever you were, right? If you felt like you didn't fit in, the representation was important to you. Probably wasn't someone on TV or comedian. It's probably like someone's older brother or a teacher or someone like that, you know. My mum, when she ran that group, she chose to be a parent of an autistic child who was proud of her child, and her representation changed the views of the other people in that group. The representation is an action you can take rather than a resource that we have to argue over. And we understand that, autistic people, don't we? Of course, because of what happened at the conference earlier this year. You remember? Just fill everyone in. So when I stood down as king of the Autistics, there was a big conference to decide who should be the next king. 3-day conference held in Swindon, and I don't know why it's funny. They've got a big conference centre. It's a good city, and 3 days. First day, I gave a little goodbye speech. Then we had sort of big discussions on who should be the next king. Second day, we all voted for who should be the next king of the Autistics, and then the third day, it was announced. Autistic people, you were there, so you know what it was like. The atmosphere was incredible, and I remember we're all there in the conference hall, and the chair of the autistic committee, that's Chris Packham, if you don't know, he came out to announce the new king, and he said, "Autistics of the world, we have a new king. Please welcome the king of the Autistics. God save the king." And everybody cheered. It was really, really exciting. And then the cheers died down. And there was sort of confusion in the room because he'd said, "Welcome the king of the Autistics." And no one had come out on stage and we didn't know what was going on. And then Chris Packham turned into a mirror to show that it is every one of us autistics. We are the kings, queens, and otherwise identifying monarchs of the autistics. We are the representation we want to see in the world. Just for the autistic people in this room, none of that happened. I know how I would feel if I was watching this. I'd be going, "Oh, great, another thing I wasn't invited to." Anyway. Anyway, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. Cheers. E-scooters are different to mobility scooters. I need to clear that up. If you don't know that, the show takes quite a hateful turn at the end. Huh?